And then compounding at the later stages also is not about revenue compounding only or customer compounding. You know, compounding is about growth in profit. So there the compounding can come to you. A higher, better compounding can come to you when your margins are expanding. So if your business is structurally set up in a manner that there is a hockey stick going to happen sometime, and then there is a cost versus the revenue. Revenues, even if revenue is growing upwards of 20 to 25%, cost is growing only 20%, the profits are still growing at 30% or so. So that compounding, everybody only sees.
Today, we have the privilege of hosting Mr. Dinesh Agarwal, the founder and CEO of IndiaMART, which is one of the largest online marketplaces in India, connecting sellers with buyers from both Indian and international markets. In the past 2 decades, Mr. Agarwal has played a vital role in revolutionizing the business landscape in India, enabling countless micro and small enterprises to establish an online presence. His great ideas, long term business strategies have earned him widespread recognition. It's a 25 plus year journey. It's positioned him as one of the few founders who not just started in the dot-com era and survived it, but grew their companies to greater and greater heights, going public in 2019. And it's been a great story post that as well. Mr. Agarwal, welcome to the Bloom podcast.
Thank you, Karthik.
Sort of the overview of the hour or so we're going to spend is broadly broken up into about 3 parts. Love to hear the backstory. Everyone wants to know the story behind IndiaMART and Mr. Dinesh Agarwal. And then we will move to a little bit of your views on where you think the market is. Because I think people's general skepticism has been, is the India market great? And we want a global audience to understand how the market has evolved and how IndiaMART's grown in that. And as you know, the theme of the podcast is power of compounding. So it's been a little bit of an obsession this year, at least for Bloom, to talk or build a narrative around why compounding is great in the long term and how it starts yielding benefits after you've stabilized the business, and then the business tends to take off. So we'd definitely love to hear your views on that. No better example of that than IndiaMART. Our research suggests you started as a systems analyst at HCL in the US, decided to come back to India to start IndiaMART in 96, personal savings of 40,000 rupees. And this was way before anybody knew what was startups or what was venture capital, and forget about being cool. And then I'm sure there were lots of small businessmen, but in your particular case, what convinced you to take this plunge? I mean, did you have a plan B? I mean, and that's always the question an entrepreneur gets asked even today.
So let's go back a little more.
Okay.
I come from a small town called Nanpara, Bahraich, near Nepal border.
Okay.
And that's where I studied schooling.
Okay.
And then went to HBTI Kanpur and I was one of the first few batches of the computer science. And fortunately, after graduating, happened to work with some of the very advanced technologies, like started with Indian Railway Reservation System at CMC Limited, UPSC automatic copy checking system at CMC. Then at CDOT, working with Sam Petrodon, trying to design or trying to work on a domestic indigenous digital telephone exchange. So while I was a basic computer science, I think I was exposed to the networking and internet and those kind of technologies early on. And then I went, because everybody was going to US, so I also went to US.
Yeah, it was fashionable to go and do postgrad or work in the US if you could.
Yeah. So after staying there for a year or so, 2-3 things happened. I think I got a lot more conviction about computer science than what I had because of my fascination during the Rajiv Gandhi era.
Yeah.
And that's how I took a computer science.
Yeah.
And then this whole internet started to happen in US between 93 and 95. And one of my uncle was already there in US for long. I didn't want to kind of settle down and live there forever, because I knew the power of compounding of Boreat.
Hmm.
There in US is far more higher.
Huh.
So initial enthusiasm of going to US
Huh.
and being cool and weekend trips
Huh.
all dies down after 4 5 years, and then
Boreal.
then
That's
it's
right.
like really boring
Yeah.
and alone, and you start to miss your culture,
Yeah.
family.
अभी तो फिर भी बहुत लोग हैं, but उस
There
समय
be,
yeah.
even now,
Yeah.
I can see my sons
Yeah.
after spending 8 8 9 9 years now. They're like,
They're done.
India jana hai.
Uh,
So and things have changed in
yeah,
India.
absolutely. It's a very different opportunity.
So 2 3 things became very clear that internet is the thing which is probably going to be here for the next 10 15 100 years, and it's much bigger invention than probably electricity or even that.
That's correct.
Number two, and I wanted to do some business in the India only,
Hmm.
and something around internet only.
Hmm.
So these are the 3 4 things. So I actually started to wait for internet to be announced here in India.
Hmm.
15th of August 1995,
Hmm.
Prime Minister announced the internet from Lal Killa.
Hmm.
On the very day, same day, I told my manager, please मेरा transfer करा दीजिए
Hmm.
back to India.
Okay.
So I basically by October 1995 I was here,
Okay.
and without any plan, but I just knew that I want to do some business in India
Hmm.
for Indians to be able to use technology, because I didn't like the fact that most of the high tech engineers after doing IITs or computer science
Correct.
would not find much to do here in India,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
and they would go and serve
Yeah, American
Western,
corporate.
automate the Western world
Yes.
with no benefit other than sending some remittances
Correct.
back home,
Correct.
which is not the idea of my
Building.
education was.
Yeah.
Mine was how can we utilize this whole education and experience back for India.
Yeah.
That was very important. Probably because I come from uh, a family which has had history of freedom fighters and
Hmm.
all that.
A lot more loyalty.
So the second part was that I wanted to do something around internet.
Hmm.
For the first 6 months or so,
Hmm.
I actually roamed around in Pragati Maidan and different trade fairs. Sometimes modem selling, sometimes peripheral selling, computer. I also thought whether computer education is a good area,
Hmm.
but somehow I think we ended up zeroing down on a website making as a basic
Hmm.
idea.
Hmm.
So that's how I started. And taking a plunge or not plunge, I think in those days when you are 5 years in computer science graduate, been to one of the best companies in India and
Hmm.
US,
Hmm.
I don't think we had too much of a risk that what will happen and what kind of plan
Your
B will
opportunity
happen.
cost wasn't that high as
Yeah, so we
people
said,
calculate nowadays.
we'll do 4 5 6 years.
Hmm.
And if not, ये नहीं तो कोई और सही, कोई और नहीं तो कुछ और सही. मतलब we will find out how to do business in India.
Yeah.
Come from a business family, so I knew that कुछ ना कुछ तो business possible है.
Huh.
So that's how it started. And even the IndiaMART,
Hmm.
when we started saying that, okay, we'll make website, I first learned myself, how to make website. Otherwise, I was a telecom engineer.
Yeah.
So I found it to be very easy to make websites,
Understood.
very, very easy.
Hmm.
The question was for whom do we make websites? Because in India,
Hmm.
internet connectivity had just started. Forget about internet connectivity.
Hmm.
Even the computers were very little
Very, very
penetrated,
few. Yeah.
very few. So taking again cue from while I was in US,
Hmm.
finding anything Indian or any Indian product or any people who are importing any Indian goods
Yeah.
was very difficult. And unlike China,
Yeah.
China was rampant. Chinese products were rampant.
Hmm.
While Indian products or finding any information about Indian businesses, exporters, was while I came back here, there was a big thrust on export,
Hmm. But no information and no
but not
directories.
much of a ITPO and
Hmm.
these trade promotion organizations
Yeah.
were still trying to work. They hadn't worked since 80s, but then suddenly they were trying to work on the same model as 80s,
Offline make.
offline model.
Hmm.
I thought there's a bigger opportunity there. If we do newer models and use the same trade promotion, and I think we studied Hong Kong Trade Development Center, Global Sources, and some of those
models as well.
models. And from there, I think we got the inspiration that let us start making websites and directory for exporters
Got it.
rather than. So it solved many things. There was a need for that information in the West.
That's right.
Exporter needed a
Way to
level playing field. Small exporters needed a level playing field against large merchant exporters who aggregated and made it difficult. Added the cost. And these people at least were mostly visiting US and Europe.
Yes.
So they were exposed to the idea of internet and computers. They will sometime bring laptop home.
So as an exporter, you're saying they were surprisingly more adept at knowing this.
More adoption was there.
Yeah.
Buyers would push them
to get digital.
To can I communicate with you on email, because international communication was expensive.
Correct.
Adopting an email communication was like 100 times cheaper.
Correct.
Or 1,000 times cheaper and faster.
Correct.
So doing a fax or doing a phone call was very, very expensive. And not that effective.
Correct.
Email could make all that effective.
Correct.
So all that made sense. And when I saw you were going to ask about the search engine, or when you make website, because when I was in US, the only way to find some information for me on internet was through Lycos or Yahoo or
the
Gopher.
Early search engines.
They are the search engines. Because there was no other way to find information. And I thought if you are the only person giving that information, the search engines would have a duty. In fact, this is their business model.
Correct.
To bring out this information. Because if they can't bring out that information, their customer goes away.
Yeah.
So all that worked out, and that's how I think the ball started to roll.
No, fascinating. No, I threw back to various memories, and I'm wondering how much of our audience today even recalls Sam Pitroda, etc. And those were the days. So clearly, I'm not too far behind in terms of generation. And some curious coincidences. I used to work in financial services before I went to the US for my MBA, and kind of fell in love with the same idea that technology can transform so many businesses, and this is the future of what is possible. Wanted a pie in every hand, so thought venture capital, even back then in 99, 2000. Because I was sitting in business school, you're exposed to a lot of these. And you see, the dot-com boom, and it looks very exciting. And before you knew it, it was the dot-com bust. So then I struggled to figure out like where do I fit in? And 4-5 years later, the emotions were almost very similar. So in my storyline, I call it the Swades movement, because the movie Swades came out in December 2005. And so the part of the joke in the family is that picture dekhe aur inspire hoke wapas aa gaya. But in my mind, I was already ready. And I think there were two triggers. The company I was working for got acquired, and I also came back. And even back here, which is the point I was going to ask you. Even in 06, with the first of the VCs having landed in the country and lot more knowledge of startups, and one cycle of attempted failed startups had already happened between 97, 98 and 2003. That phase felt like a black hole. The very few people who lived even as a early stage entrepreneur and survived to today. I mean, if you actually go back in history, I think even a Vijay Shekhar Sharma, even a Ashish Hemrajani, of course, Sanjeev Bikhchandani, of course, Dinesh Agarwal. All of you were like born in that era of excitement of building something in tech. But like in a good and bad way, not horror stories, but like sustenance, grit stories from that era. So if you can give us some anecdotes around how difficult was it? I mean, you make it seem easy that need tha, maine dekha, and we started solving it. And you're absolutely right on that front. That's how a great business foundation gets built. But I can't imagine it would have been easy for the next 5-7 years.
When you choose something very, very transformative or very forward-looking business, which is probably, because my thought itself was that it will take 5 to 10 years to build something meaningful. I mean, I didn't.
There was no like urgency or foolishness around thinking कि 2-3 साल में कुछ हो जाएगा.
But the beauty of all those businesses at that point of time
Hmm.
were that uh, they didn't have this luxury of any external funding or venture capital. I
That's
didn't even knew what is a venture capital.
that's right.
So they had to find a sustainable way to reach to pass that 7 years or 10 years journey or 5 to 10 years journey.
Yeah. If you'd imagine that you have to live till that long.
Yeah, so you have to find a way.
Hmm.
How are you going to make money,
Hmm.
or how are you going to keep the cost lower
Hmm.
and still keep on growing?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because you know that even within my own vision,
Hmm.
it is at least 5 years away.
Hmm.
Whatever I'm trying to do, it is
Hmm.
not something happening overnight or in next 1 year or 2 years.
Hmm.
So you have to live through that time.
Hmm.
And whether it is family, friends, or whether it is your own money, or
Hmm.
whether it is, in those days, monies used to be, thousands and lakhs maximum.
That's correct.
So, and that won't
sustain you for all this.
sustain you. So
Any
you have
excessive spend over what you can make.
yeah.
Yes.
So what you have to do is find a way to make money. And in our case, we were building websites. And many other Naukri and other people, I think they were all trying to make some microsites. We also did email solutions, basic intranet softwares,
Hmm.
anything that we could do around internet, which would give us a lakh or two,
Yeah.
as a services business.
Hmm.
And somehow, if it is adjacency to my IndiaMART basic exporter directory business.
Hmm.
Now, where do you start? Because if there is no base of trade promotion or anything,
Hmm.
people don't have computers. You definitely need an email ID.
Hmm.
So few innovations or few compulsions came in. We would have our people going in front of every trade fair,
Hmm.
wearing t-shirts and noting down their addresses and some free listing form. We would send hundreds and thousands of free listing form to every directory,
Hmm.
so that they can come back with the better, because we could digitize much more information than what was there in a yellow page directory.
Correct.
A yellow page directory typically would have just a 4 liners or 3 liners.
That's right.
You could digitize the whole page.
That's right.
So you need to collect all that information. So we did that for a long period of time. One of the innovations that we
Hmm.
compulsorily had to do
Hmm.
every day when the inquiries will come from West and especially America.
Hmm.
Every evening we will print those inquiries,
Okay.
fax them overnight, and next day send them by post to the suppliers in India. So it was uh, buyer on the other side is on internet, email. Seller here are on normal
Yeah.
way of doing business.
Yeah.
And we will print those inquiries, fax them overnight,
Yeah.
and send them by post. And that continued for 5 years.
Amazing.
So from 1996, late 1996 until 2001,
Hmm.
this happened. And every day, for the initial few days, I would go with two bag full of envelopes containing inquiries, sit down in the post office for half an hour, sometimes stamp
Doing the stamps yourself.
by myself. And I don't know whether that worked or not, but that gave us a lot of inspiration that we could do. Even we can, I mean, we were so bought into our idea
Yeah.
that we could go even to that level
To make it happen.
to make it happen. Just like today, people say that, okay, we will pick up the goods from you, collect the goods, deliver somewhere else, then take a return,
Yeah.
refund it back to you, no questions asked. So there are people who believe that e-commerce can make them money,
Yeah.
and that is why they are doing all this, right?
Correct.
Going all the way to pick up the goods and
Yeah.
do all that.
Yeah.
Similarly, in our
In your
times,
avatar. Yes.
whatever money we had,
Yeah.
we still could not gather any courage even today to touch the goods. We feel
Yeah.
that touching the goods is
It's a different business out. Fascinating. No, so I'm going to switch gears a little and actually try to see if we can recount this. So for me, in these compounding journeys, sometimes one of the great milestone markers for what compounding truly means is potentially. I know I haven't set you up for this question, but I'm sure you know this number. When did IndiaMART reach 1 crore, 10 crore, 100 crore, 1,000 crores of revenue?
I actually remember my all 27 years revenue by heart, actually. So 6
So this
lakhs,
one is easy.
6 lakhs, 24 lakhs, 53 lakhs, 1 crore, 24 lakhs. So fourth year we reached 1 crore, 24 lakhs. And then we reached 12 crores, 12.5 crores in FY 2005. And we reached 100 crores in FY 11. And we reached 1,000 crores in FY 23.
No, it's like a fascinating run of revenue growth, and it's amazing that you know these numbers inside out. And so, in the while we were prepping for the conversation, if you recall, I think you spoke about compounding happens all the time, even at an earlier stage. The only difference I wanted to project is it's very difficult to compound at scale, and that doesn't happen if you've not built a baseline of phenomenal organization, culture, profitability at some lens, because otherwise you're at the mercy of investors giving you money to compound. So as long as investors are paying for it, it feels it's easy, and maybe a lot of startups get away with that. In your case, you've shown that just hard work and product market fit back in as early as 97 drove that kind of growth even back then. So philosophically, that's what I've been trying to drive to my founders, right? As a VC, we want to be able to propagate a certain type of entrepreneurship. And I just wanted to hear your views and insights on.
So compounding, I've seen even everyone day-to-day businesses,
Yeah.
they also grow at 10%. I mean, they generally keep 10% as their baseline.
Yeah.
Did I grow 10% from previous year? 5-6% inflation, 4-5% inflation.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you're trying to grow, at least 5% over and above the inflation.
That's right.
So that's anyway everybody's
basics of business. Yeah.
I know everybody in the salaried employee also expects a double-digit
growth in their salary.
minimum double-digit kind of a growth. So that's given. Okay. You are right, at the earlier levels, at the lower levels or lower volumes, you could grow even 100%, 50%. But that's not what is required even at the larger volume. So larger volume, people's expectation is typically, 25, 30%, 33%. I have seen some of the bestest
that's right.
companies
I call it like the HDFC,
in the world,
IndiaMART like models. Yeah.
So even Amazon or Googles of the world, they typically when they grow upwards of 30, they take a lot of pride. Even 20, 25 is good. Anything when it goes down to below 20 is bad. So I think 10% anybody can grow. And if you've taken venture capital, if you've taken many years, and if you want yourself to be called not a businessman but an entrepreneur, जिसकी spelling मुझे अभी तक नहीं याद हुई है, then 10 का 20 तो बनता ही है. मतलब that much at least you can manage. Now the question is between 20 and 30 is the rating. At 30 you become a rock star. At 20 you are like good to survive. And then compounding at the later stages also is not about revenue compounding only or customer compounding. Compounding is about growth in profit. So there the compounding can come to you. A higher, better compounding can come to you when your margins are expanding. So if your business is structurally set up in a manner that there is a hockey stick going to happen sometime, and then there is a cost versus revenue. Revenues, even if revenue is growing upwards of 20 to 25%,
profits are growing faster.
Cost is growing only 20%. The profits are still growing at 30% or so.
They're compounding.
So that compounding, everybody only sees.
So
I think it's not that very difficult. And don't come back and say you yourself is growing 22% and how giving Gyan is easy. But I'm saying it's not very difficult
Hmm.
also. I mean, doing a 24, 25% with 1% margin expansion, I
Is
think
possible.
uh, is possible, should be possible. Otherwise, you need to go back to your product market fit or strategy or.
No, all good points. That's what I think we keep debating. I'm saying this is exactly where I was at. Why do current modern age entrepreneurs seek so much capital and so much time to validate exactly what you said is a baseline for great compounding? It feels like a lot in the context of being operating in India. So if you're doing radically new technologies, which takes 10 years to mature, and that was the purpose of venture capital, if you think about it, 50 years ago, semiconductors, mainframes, personal computers, chips, networking equipment, all built by venture capital. That I can understand, right? Where you have to put in the capex and the R&D to get there. But as you said, a lot of the businesses in India, whether it's B2C or B2B, danda from day one, right? You either there's a PMF.
Is there a network effect? Is there a exit barrier? Is there not entry barriers? The entry barriers are, there is a plenty of
Yeah,
capital. I mean, today you can say in case of Amazon, there is an entry
yeah,
barrier because they have made so many
that's correct.
warehouses and fulfillment
Yeah,
centers that now it's an entry barrier to even match
that kind
that
of,
kind
yeah.
of
Yeah.
delivery
Wasn't
network.
there in 2012
Uh,
when they came in and
yeah.
competed with Flipkart.
So I guess what is the exit barrier for your
Hmm.
customers, or what is the
Hmm.
stickiness, and how does it help, what is the flywheel and what is the network effect, or how your business grows when the client business grows.
Hmm.
So I think some of those parameters, if they are not thought well, uh, and that's why
Hmm.
I try to always classify all the venture funded business or private equity funded
Hmm.
business uh, into trading kind of business,
Purely technology led.
or a technology network effect kind of business.
It's a great lesson for all the young investor VC personas who are listening into you today. Because I think fundamentally that when the difference is not made, then you get the wrong bet for what you think you've made. It becomes too capital intensive. It becomes capital guzzling, and as you said, the exit barriers are too low.
I mean, the best example is the duopoly of cab hailing
That's good.
services everywhere in the
Yeah,
world. Despite the fact that every time you pick up your wallet
with the
or pick up
phone.
your phone, you end up paying them 500
Yeah,
rupees. I don't think any other great business model is
yeah,
like that. But even then, if it is just purely that,
yeah.
even in that case, Lyft and Uber are struggling to make
That's right.
money. So I think uh, there has to be something else to that
Hmm.
flywheel. Otherwise, somebody will come back with $100 million and create a non-profitability for you.
So your lessons, if you had to like summarize lessons on, did you have to face this dilemma on compromising growth for profitability at any point of time? Would you make a choice? And what is your? I know you've expressed enough views, but what's the summary view for like young entrepreneurs in the country when they're making these choices for themselves?
I did whatever I did was uh, from the first principle and trying to do this and trying to do that. When I look back, a lot of that is actually now found in the
Hmm.
books. What we ended up doing, and it's been well researched and written, and especially in the network effect or SaaS kind of
Hmm.
businesses. When do you press the paddle and when do you press the
Hmm.
brake? Especially in the subscription kind of
Yeah.
businesses, when do you find that there is enough product market
Yeah.
fit, and then you go into loss
Correct.
making, knowingly that the CAC versus LTV is going to
Improve over a period of time.
improve a period of time, and then mistake most of the people have made is that initial thought was that it is 18 months to break
Yeah.
even, then it became 36 months, and then it became unlimited. So I think that's when you have to course correct when to press the
Yeah.
paddle, and when you can actually go for
Yeah.
growth and leave the profitability, and when to revert back, especially in the subscription CAC LTV kind
Yeah,
of
your
businesses.
business lends a lot to that kind of predictability, and you can get a grip on it. You're absolutely right. Most of them talk about it in the SaaS world because that's better documented, but it applies very much to your
Yeah.
subscription businesses. Maybe a little bit more insight on your core business, marketplaces themselves. Whenever we have backed a marketplace, challenge is not necessarily achieving, like how you knew the exporters had a need and you like made sure that their need was fulfilled as you got the customer inquiries from the US. That's easy to do one way, but like how does the flywheel actually begin to operate? And we found anecdotally that a lot of your sellers are also buyers on your platform, so that's clear validation and at multiple levels. But what does it take to get this flywheel moving, and how does it accelerate? Most marketplaces seem to get stuck on suboptimal scale, and maybe it just happened naturally because you built very well, took a little bit more time, and then it started kicking in. That's obvious. But is there any other cue that you can give us? And maybe related to that, and maybe you can weave both of these. What might have started as your original presence in NCR and some international buyers, today you have a presence in 1,000+ cities, right,
Mm.
across big towns, small towns. And how do in as you're building that flywheel, you know that these are all not identical customers as well. So they're different buyers and sellers across these segments. So how do you keep adapting to that as we went from a web world to a mobile first world, etc.? So trying to get a grip on understanding how this business grew into what it's become today.
So let me first break it down to two different
Yes,
eras. Out of these last 27, 28 years, first 13, 14 years, as I said, we were purely focused on export, and we didn't entertain Indian buyers because our customers were exporters and they didn't entertain.
understood. They didn't serve anybody here.
So our suppliers were here and buyers were in the US, Europe, Middle East, and those
Hmm.
places. It was a very basic flywheel or a network effect because there was a directory. And since there was a directory, when a buyer wanted to search for something, say ceramic cup from India, they could at one single place find 10 ceramic cup
Yeah,
exporters. And that was and as the 11th got added, the 11th buyer found it
interesting now as a directory.
more
Yeah,
useful. However, that was still two separate sides of network effect, two different
correct.
creatures. Sometime around 2008, 9,
Hmm.
10, we started to think and
Hmm.
realize that India export story, which started from 1991,
Hmm.
92 until 97, I mean 2007,
Correct.
2008, is kind of again plateauing. Nothing new has happened
Hmm.
during 2006 and or 2004 to 2009 time
Hmm.
frame, which could actually repropel exports for a 30-40% growth.
Understood.
We could
Yeah.
sense.
You have ground data. You're seeing the sentiment.
Also, the smartphones were about their,
Just coming in.
just coming, and the Google searches became more local. The search responses became more local.
Hmm.
Third, whatever you say, India by
Hmm.
2008 had enough number of internet connections and reliable internet
Hmm.
connections. It was very difficult for us to keep Indian audience away from IndiaMART because the exporters did not like them,
Hmm.
and Indian audience kept coming to them for Indian inquiries.
Hmm.
And that was a tailwind
Yeah.
of Indian
Hmm.
buyers
Hmm.
looking for this kind of a product
Hmm.
directory or a. So we purposefully said that
Hmm.
okay, since export we can sense that it is not
Hmm.
growing, India is giving a signal that there is a enough demand now in
Hmm.
India. Why not focus on domestic B2B?
Hmm.
And domestic B2B had one more advantage because it's a domestic and B2B. Every buyer is a possible seller, and every seller is definitely a
That's correct.
buyer. Because if you are selling something, so you are definitely a buyer
Yes.
of
Yeah.
something. And every buyer is also, if he's a business
Hmm.
buyer, he must be selling something, kind of
Correct.
thing. So that became another community effect or a strong community
Hmm.
effect. And that is why for the next 3-4 years, we pumped money heavily into
Domestic.
IndiaMART, domestic. and we build this whole supply side, domestic
Hmm.
supply side, and and also I think we found few more innovations around
Hmm.
product, whether it is virtual number through number masking, or whether it is RFQs, which are generally used by large corporations and
Hmm.
governments, enable them on the platform, or whether it is prices on the B2B to become transparent, which is very opaque. Nobody wants B2B prices to be
Correct.
upfront
That's right.
written, just like
General consumer goods. Yeah.
general consumer
Yeah.
goods. So I think three, four things that we did actually made it much more easier for
Hmm.
us to create this whole better community and network
Hmm.
effect. When any new buyer or any new seller joins platform, he not only finds it interesting and
Hmm.
useful, it his addition is even more useful for the rest of the already accumulated buyers and sellers over a period of
Hmm.
time. I mean, just like a Facebook or
Hmm.
something, as more of your family, more of your friends, or LinkedIn for that matter,
Yeah.
join,
It becomes more
more
valuable
of
as an
your
extension.
photos, more of your check-ins, more of your linkages keep
Yeah.
happening, and the network gets deeper and deeper.
Hmm.
So that level of flywheel and network effect is very important to understand in our kind of
No,
business.
fascinating examples and shows like how close I think the organization's ear is to the pulse of the market, and each of those additions have become mini flywheels, which are then creating like the level of consistency that you don't generally see, and that's what I meant by compounding as well. This seems like a classic customer compounding story.
The good part is that when you create a product market fit, one small product market fit over the
Yeah,
years can generate many mini
micro product.
micro product market fits. So these RFQs or buy leads, what we
Yeah,
call, we gave them, then we started to reharvest them. Then we found that this is the first time sellers are themselves coming on the platform every day. Otherwise, sellers advertised on the platform, and then next year you collect
yeah,
renewal, and then only they will tell साल भर में कुछ फायदा नहीं
correct.
हुआ, no buyers
Yeah,
came in. But because these RFQs were there, the people started to come on the platform every
uh,
day. And then we started to know, okay, whatever is in his catalog, only this portion of the catalog is far more important because he's consuming only these leads. Rest of the catalog is actually not, he's not interested in.
yeah.
So while we gave him 200 inquiries, he only
Wanted this.
wanted these 20 inquiries.
Understood.
So we actually started to push more like these 20 to him, and take away more like these 80s, and started giving to
The
those to
data
him.
tells you a lot at that point.
And then we introduced what you liked and what you don't liked, and that today is laying out the foundation of further RFQ recommendation, as this one was rejected by me, this one was selected by me. So it's a foundation of ML, that what all kinds of RFQs do I like
Correct.
and what all kind of RFQs do I don't like. Then, based upon don't like, the further regions started to come up. Whether I don't like the location, whether I don't like the specification, whether
You're getting better and better with matching this every day, literally.
yeah, and information to correct my
That's
own
right.
taxonomy, to correct my own
Fascinating.
things. So what happens is, one small seed that you sow, if that becomes ingrained into the product market fit, it can give you multiple
Rewards and trees. Yeah.
outcomes every couple of years. And while your initial cost was the
Correct.
same, you could get more and more compounding effect of outcomes
Hmm.
from. So I don't think we do too many product market fits every year. We actually end up doing maybe
Yeah.
one product market fit once
3 years
in 3
or
years.
so.
But then uh, I'm harvesting three
Crops.
product market fits for the last 9 years. So every year we end up harvesting three additional
Fascinating.
benefits of those product market
So
fits.
that's fantastic. So I think you've touched upon compounding of the customer need, compounding of how product market fit plays a role, and then leads to sort of revenue, etc. But they touch upon 2-3 different things. One is this amazing stat about your leadership team now being intact for almost a decade, right? What is that meant for your ease of building out the business to become bigger and bigger? And within that, as is culture a different aspect, or is it ingrained in how sort of leadership takes the organization forward?
I mean, your own long-term
Hmm.
view, the founder's long-term view on the business, if it is not percolated to every employee, then that founder's vision that I would work here for 10 years, and while employees can keep on, because the natural duration of millennial employees is only 2.5 years, it doesn't work,
Yeah.
because at least at the middle senior level, I do a very candid
Hmm.
conversation that, are you even thinking 5 years, 10 years with us? Then only join. Otherwise, there's no point, because in the 3 years you can't really make a difference.
Hmm.
You can't really
Hmm.
understand what we did in 2014, how it played out in 2017, and how if we don't do
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
today. So I think it is very important for a large number of
Hmm.
people to keep it one well-oiled machinery, and two, to
Hmm.
understand by doing what happens, what happened, and what can happen and what cannot
Hmm.
happen. So it is very important to have a longer
Hmm.
view of the
Hmm.
organization and of the
Hmm.
vision, and that is from day one. So we try and do that, that as soon as you complete 1 year,
Hmm.
3 year, how do you become a 5 year, 10 year, 7 year? So in our case, last year we had 3,000 employees. Out of that, we had 1,000 employees who were more than 10 years, more than 5 years, and 300 employees more than 10 years. So I think that is very important, because if you can't,
Again, it forms a base for like that company.
it's a knowledge
Yeah.
company, and the knowledge company people are the main
Repositories of
ingredients,
that knowledge. Yeah.
because you don't have a factory, you don't have a patent. Whatever you have is the knowledge which is residing in the. Yes, you can put a lot of process so that people become irrelevant, but at the end of the day, their 9 years of experience or 7 years of experience is very important to say, when we did this, that didn't happen.
So, any pro tips on? I know you spoke about propagating vision to everybody. So then you're probably giving them direction and a sense of why they need to build what you're asking them to build collectively. But are there any other tips that young founders should be able to pick up? Saying how do you like build that kind of culture? I know you ask the tough questions, but how difficult is it actually? I mean, especially given what you said, it's difficult to hold talent nowadays. If you
So what do you call as a talent? So there is the alpha talent, what we
mm,
call very highly
mm,
talented, but very sometimes very uh, the more alpha it is, the more chanchal it
mm,
is, because they can do many
uh,
things.
he wants always to run Bagna to the next new thing, next best thing.
Next new thing,
Yeah.
FOMO, because that's what makes him an
Uh,
alpha. While we continue to look for stable alphas, we stay away from unstable alphas completely.
Understood.
We are better off with the stable
Yeah.
betas and few
That.
stable alphas, because if you get too many alphas who just keep thinking what's the
Mm,
future, because then who's thinking what's the present, who's doing what's the
yeah.
present, because get the shit done is
Yeah.
important, right? And getting that
Yeah.
done, typically alphas don't like it,
Correct.
so I think you need to have a mix of
This talent.
talent, who who are operationally strong, who can think, यार कल जो होगा सो देखी जाएगी, आज का ये बताओ ना, ये today's the problem
Mm,
is this. We can't live in future all the
mm,
time. At the same time, some people are always reading the newspaper or articles, what's going to happen 3 years down the
yeah.
line, 5 years down the
So
line.
healthy mix
So I
is
think
basically what you're saying.
the mix is very important, because if you get that mix
Yeah.
wrong, and managing that mix is also very
Mm.
important.
So three things around compounding of value to all stakeholders, your employees, investors. You know, phenomenal story, I think, which is undertold in the Indian venture ecosystem around So similar to revenue, I don't know if you recall your journey, and were you ever cognizant of valuation or value that you had created at a point in time, and how do you distance yourself from that on a day-to-day basis before you went public? Now you have no option. Somebody or the other will remind you of how much your valuation is,
Market
your
cap is.
market cap is. It's public news. But before that, how do you stay away from that? And therefore, correlated question is, why do you think, if you have an opinion, I honestly am trying to change that perception in the market, but with my portfolio first and then by writing publicly, that it is more imperative to try and find a path to build a long-term sustainable organization and then compound in the public markets. So I know you waited a long time before going public. Were there any reasons for or against that? And how did you understand your value marker until you went public? And then it's been a phenomenal story after going public. What do you make of your life that now that you've gone public and it's actually you're worth 18, 20,000 crores, given whatever the market price is on a particular day, when you actually IPO'd at 3, 4,000 crore ranges?
So two, three answers. First of all, for the first 5, 10 years of my journey, I think the valuation itself was not
established in the
probably it came in for a little time during 99. Few people before it could even be understood by Hindi medium, sarkari school people, students like us. It just vanished. Okay.
bus
So,
story. That's not a boom.
so fortunately, for the first 10 years, the only numbers which were important was what is my revenue, what is my cash flow, and how much am I able to pay to my employees, because I had them when I didn't have money. So can I
make their lives better?
make their lives better, make my life better?
Two sets of stakeholders other than customers.
I mean, customer is always in the center, So without customer, none of these two is going to happen. So keep doing everything for the customer.
They pay you
or the product, because that they were the only payers. We didn't have any investors, financiers. So customers' money is the only money, and how do you maximize that between revenue, profit? So maximize revenue from customers and see how it can drive some profit so that you can give back to the employees and yourself. That was the only model. Between 2006 and 16, I think, or 7 and 17, this whole valuation, paper valuation, that even if you hold 5% of $1 billion versus 50% of $100 million, said by you guys to market. I think a lot of founders bought that. And that was a wrong bait that they took. I don't think that that is correct. 50% of $100 million is better than 5% of $1 billion. Okay.
We're playing with for our incentives. You're absolutely right. From a founder lens, what you're saying is probably much more saner.
Bilkul. So because there was a lot of BCs, they were more educated, came from US, so they knew how to market themselves in this whole, and they brought the term unicorn, and which I think now, hopefully between 2007 and 17 and 27, people will realize, and this will balance out. Some balance out. So, and you yourself are receding from that fact, because valuation on paper is very frothy and can be. We all have seen how even a company like Naukri, which has been listed for like 16, 17 years, has gone from $500 million to close to $10 billion, and then came back to $6 billion, $6 billion. So it can be very frothy, and even if it is there for investors to cash in, cash out, not for founders. Founders, you sell 2 shares and you'll be news in the news. But I'm just I don't even have a trading account because of this. Paper valuations are for your investors, not for you as a founder. And if you get carried away from there,
you're playing for the wrong incentives.
You are trapped by other people into their game. Coming to the other part, why did I take so much longer? So it is not. See, both the times, these 13, 14 years of the first business and 13, 14 years of the second business, it took us 5 years typically to find the product market fit and become profitable enough. First time also, by 2003, we were making good amount of profit. And if the export story would have continued,
Mm.
we would have gone public then
Mm.
in whatever 2007, 8, 9
Mm.
time frame
Mm.
when Naukri
Mm.
went public. But when then we changed the business model completely. So it's a new company which was born in 2009 December or
Mm.
something. So from 2010 January, we started to build a completely new
Mm.
company, which is a only the name is same, everything else is different. The ingredients were exporters. Now the ingredients are local
Mm.
manufacturers. Buyers were all foreign
Yeah.
buyers. Buyers are now foreign. So again, by 2014 end, we had found the
The product
product
market.
market fit. So took us 4 or 5 years.
And then you wanted to see numbers to have a credibly large
And
size.
then from 2016 onwards, we started to look for IPO.
Mm.
And because in 2016 we found another distraction where we went into Tolexo as a journey for where we actually touched goods and tried to deliver and tried to do that.
I remember that.
We I think closed down in 2017 or
Yeah.
so, between 16. So that's when we did another private round for Tolexo, not for IndiaMART. IndiaMART had actually found the product market fit in by the end of 2014
Understood.
15. So we could actually go do IPO in 17 18
Yeah.
anyway. 18 it could have happened, but then ILFS crisis
Yeah.
happened, so it got postponed by 8 9
The
months.
final question on that segment is like, what is going public and seeing a notion of this? And maybe the related question is, we've talked about various types of compounding. What is your North Star on compounding? What do you obsess about when you say, is it, obviously it's not market cap. I know you better to ask that question, but is it revenue? Is it profit? Is it people? Is it customers? Which guides the rest of your decision making?
So now I think, I've spent enough time with company and no longer even obsessed by my personal money or anything. Just for taking a number, you keep taking, how many customers can I do? What kind of contribution to the GDP can we make? So today we make anywhere between 0.5% to 1% contribution to GDP. How do we make it cheaper and easier to do business in India? How should we not fall prey to 20% commission? How do we kind of extend the benefit instead of say just couple of thousand sellers and millions of buyers to couple of million sellers and billions of buyers, unlike transactional marketplace where there are 10 20 100 2000 suppliers serving the needs of millions and of buyers.
Yeah.
How do we make millions of suppliers? Because India is a country which can only and only flourish if there are, because we can't create formal jobs
That's right.
like in US where everybody
I'm
is.
fully with you. No, I can see the mission.
So we can't do away with the
That's right.
SMEs. And if we somehow suppose if we ignore them, this will become a hell.
Yes.
The country will become a hell.
You have to create
You can't.
employment and income, and
Yeah. So if they, because they can't, they are not engineers, they are not
Yeah.
MBAs, and if you don't give them business,
what's the utility? Yeah.
what else they can they do? They can't go back to labor
In the fields,
fields or
in the warehouse.
they are not
Yeah.
kisan. So these are the only 4 or 5 employment ways, and one of the biggest, very big employment ways is the inefficiency that we live
Yeah.
into. Why do we have every kirana shop
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
10
Yeah.
meters, every 100
Yeah.
meters? Why do we have a pawn shop every 10 meters? Why can't people walk half a kilometer? And because that is where he makes 1 rupee
Yeah.
per cigarette more than if you walk 1 kilometer, and you are happy to
Yeah.
pay. So something like these, when you trying to cut the middleman's commission completely and do away with them, it might be good for you for short term, but it's not good for you for long term in the country. And you'll not be able to survive if your people around you are not employed.
No, it's a great way of thinking about business in a self-preservative way, but the construct is beautiful, sir. So last question before I get to rapid fire. I know you've dabbled with a little bit of angel investing and you support a bunch of founders, seen you on certain cap tables. What is your motivation? Is it just to give back, or is it, do you focus on sectors and people and ideas that you love?
So in 2012-13, we were about to find the product
Mm.
market fit. I knew this.
Uh-huh.
I'm there knocking at the
Uh,
door. So that's when, I started thinking, if we at
uh,
someday, if we generate good amount of cash
uh,
flows, how will we look at capital
mm,
allocation going
mm,
forward? What is going to
mm,
happen? And I didn't want company suddenly to start wasting its money without having any
mm,
experience. Also, between 2014 and
mm,
then
mm,
now, so much new innovations is
mm.
happening, and we were a B2B boring company
Yeah,
trying to do few things. How do you keep your eyes and ears on the
yeah,
ground? What's happening? What's new? How people are, and especially this mobile
yeah,
device, artificial intelligence,
yeah.
voice, video. So that was the motivation. That how do I learn this? Learning has a fees. So you just can't go to seminars and
Correct, correct,
uh, and
correct.
learn. The best way is to either invest or something like that. So I aligned with, fortunately, Rajesh
Yes,
Sahni. At the similar time joined our board, and he opened
that's
GSF.
right.
So I aligned with him. We He will typically bring 5 to 10 founders
Yeah.
for
Raj has done a great
screening.
job. He's such a
Yeah,
he's a
for for
community guy.
for
Yeah,
screening, and that screening is the main purpose for me to
yeah,
learn. Then we just put, initially we started one lakh 10 founders. Now we do 10
yeah,
10 lakhs. Each maybe it was 5
yeah,
lakhs. So effectively, in the entire year, you are hardly spending 550 lakh rupees a
yeah.
year, but you
Get
end
exposure
up
to some
spending
great ideas.
exposure to, some, and also over the last 2 3 5 years
Hmm.
period, you come to know who raised, who busted, who got
Hmm.
acquired. So before I started to invest India Mart's
Hmm.
money, I wanted some of my own money or to put at
Hmm.
stake to learn how
Actually play
things
out.
actually play out. And that came very handy when, in 2009, 18, 19,
Yeah.
20, when India Mart started to
Invest and acquire.
uh, invest and acquire and do M&A. Because by that time, I could kind of at least get some
Will
sense
this work or not? Will this founder will?
what work. Because, I was not the venture capital. I never took the much of too many investment. I didn't interact with too many venture capital. How do they think? So I think this was the only way for me to learn. Because today I have a, you said your latest fund is $250 million. Our fund is also $250 million to date India Mart to be
That's right.
deployed.
You have the capital to
So,
invest in.
so if you really
Yeah.
see,
You have to become a quasi venture capitalist to grow.
yeah, if not venture capital,
Meant
at
like
least
strategic capitalist to
even,
grow.
yeah, strategist capitalist. So we need to learn that also. And apart from doing this
Yeah.
business, and as part of my elevation, I think, as I delegate better product market
Yeah.
fit and execution, I think it's a natural fit that, because investing and
Yeah.
acquisition requires a lot more operating knowledge as well as some
No, I
investing
know
knowledge.
some founders like yours, like think like yourself. Like basically, they're educating themselves for their own company's future.
And my money got
That's
returned. In fact, over
correct.
the 5 years, it
No,
started
if
to
you do
just
it for the
rotate.
right reasons and you're doing it with the right people and you're networked right,
Hmm.
usually you might not make tons of money, but you won't lose too much. One or
Yeah,
two
yeah.
hits will pay off for all the
That's what
failures.
happened.
So great. And then the last part of that is all these youngsters, do they come to you for advice? And what do you find yourself telling them the most? What are the one or two things that you feel like happy telling these young founders?
So I think my biggest thing is the think long term. Don't even think 5 years now. In our case, 5 years we became profitable. At
Yeah.
1 crore
Yeah.
revenue, we became profitable, and then by 10 crores we became comfortably
Yeah.
profitable. But I think those were days, सस्ते जमाने
Correct.
थे.
Zaman बहुत सस्ता था back then. Yeah.
कंपटीशन बहुत कम
Correct.
था. VC मनी
Correct.
नहीं था. Now, 5 7 years, if you're successful, there'll be 10 people funded in the same space doing same thing as
Correct.
you. Okay.
Correct.
So 5 7 years would be gone to kind of
just establishing differentiation and
just establishing that you are the top three or
correct.
not. Because you may become top three first in the first 2 3 years, but then there would be too many me too's, and today's me too's will come with
Firepower.
lot of capital and even intelligence. So effectively, your business will start in the 6th 7th year.
No, that's what it feels like. I know we're living through these journeys and we go and pitch the idea that it's a 10-year fund. And the reality, as I told you, I was giving an example. We just rotated our position so that we can hold for 15 because the journeys felt like they started in the 7th, 8th year.
So, and India especially, because the paying capacity is limited and it is evolving rapidly. So even the TAMs are evolving rapidly. So it takes 3 plus 3, 3 years for your own product market fit, and then 3 years to weed out that I'm the best. 3 plus 3 is the bare minimum to say that, okay, now I'm here. Then for you to enjoy another 6, it makes 12.
Thank you for all of those. We're going to wrap up, but before that, a fun section, just a bunch of rapid fire questions. One line, one word, whatever works for you is great, sir. What does a successful business mean to you in one line? Or what is the notion of success? You can answer either.
Success is very different to different set of people. One, obviously, you're not dependent on capital all the time, either to any financial. When you are not dependent to run your business on external capital, whether it is bank capital or venture capital, that gives you a very good freedom to say
that in itself is success.
That itself is a success. And then I think the important thing is, do you feel that you have done better than last year?
Sort of growing yourself every year. That is success.
And not comparing
to others.
To others. To others, there is Mukesh Ambani and Warren Buffett. And I mean, you are like,
there's no end
how
to
do you
it.
keep? There's no end to it, right? So I think you can be happier with your family.
This is almost an impossible hypothetical question that because you've been at it for 27 years. But if IndiaMART didn't happen, do you at times think, ye bhi karte to acha hota? Like,
No, so I did. I don't think I left any internet business model untouched. I did e-commerce, I did gifting business, I did travel, I did classifieds, Click India. I mean, I did anything and everything because while there are times when you think IndiaMART to sab ho gaya, and then you want to do things differently, or there are times when you say IndiaMART is not moving, I need to find the new
short
thing.
answer is you would still keep testing the power of the internet to build great business ideas.
Yeah, I think the bigger question is, can technology and internet do something for businesses? There are hundreds and multiple
That's
of
your passion
businesses
from day one.
Yeah, you can do that.
One activity outside of IndiaMART that you would think you would like to spend more time on, or do you get enough time to do everything you like outside of IndiaMART?
So now I don't get enough time to do it because suddenly things changed from 2019 or 20 onwards, especially post COVID. One, obviously, the whole business model gone under change. Work from home, then work from office, then work from home, then work from office again. And now this whole artificial intelligence, and you need to play a lot of catch up, and it's very exciting. So I don't think I get a lot of time. I wish I could get a lot of time. I wanted to do a lot of work on the girl child education. That's especially in the area from where I come, some kind of a scholarship. I also tried to put a Jyoti Colors scholarship. Still haven't been able to find time
what
on
a fun question. What is the strangest product you've seen listed on IndiaMART?
Oh, many strangest product. So Totapari Bakri. And
so animals also trade.
Yeah, I mean, animals means livestock. Livestock. I mean, how would you eat chicken otherwise? In the amount of variety and the that you don't realize in general, and very very specific items. Let's just stop. Leave it at that.
No, Mr. Agarwal, thank you again for your time today. It was a truly exciting, inspiring conversation, and plenty of food for thought for our listeners to think really, really long term, build sustainable businesses. We have A lot of wonderful guests this season, but I don't think there's a more remarkable example of this than you. And once again, thank you for the time.
Thank you very much for inviting us to Bloom.